There is a sacred current moving through the fabric of your life, a quiet, invisible rhythm that responds not to what you lack, but to what you embody. You are not here to beg from the universe. You are here to remember that you are one with it. The moment you begin to act as if it's already yours, you align with a truth so profound, so eternal, that the world begins to bend in your favor, not because you forced it to, but because you finally stopped resisting what was always meant for you. Imagine for a moment that everything your heart has ever longed for, peace, love, freedom, purpose, is not something outside of you waiting to be earned or proven. It is already present in the unseen realm, quietly orbiting your being, waiting for your permission to land. It is your belief that brings it to form, your embodiment that calls it near. The universe is not withholding, it is waiting. Waiting for you to match its frequency, to walk as if the door is already open, to breathe as if the miracle is already unfolded. The sages have always said it not with fanfare, but with reverence. As within, so without. The outer world is not a creator, it is a mirror. And the reflection it offers you is shaped by the convictions you carry in your soul. Act not from need, but from knowing. Not from fear, but from faith. You are not a beggar at the gates of destiny. You are the architect of your experience, sculpting reality with the clay of consciousness. To act as if it's already yours is not to pretend, it is to remember. It is to dissolve the illusion of separation between your desires and your divine nature. Every longing you have is sacred evidence of what is already aligned with your highest self. You would not yearn for it if it were not already coded into your soul's becoming. Your desire is not a sign of lack, it is a whisper from the infinite nudging you toward your truth. Step forward now, not with arrogance, but with the gentle power of remembrance. Walk as if the ground beneath you has been kissed by divine intention. Speak as if your words hold the creative force of stars. Love as if your heart was never broken, as if it's been whole all along. Because when you act as if it's already yours, you step out of time, out of limitation, out of fear, and you become a vessel through which the miraculous can enter. Do not wait for the world to approve of your worth before you begin living from it. You are not a product of validation. You are a revelation of the divine. The seed does not bloom because the soil applauds it blooms, because that is its nature. And so it is with you. Your nature is expansion. Your truth is abundance. Your essence is already whole. The ego will say, you'll be happy when, but the soul gently counters, be happy now and all will follow. The ego will demand proof, but the soul offers presence. The ego fears what it cannot control, but the soul dances in the mystery, trusting that the unseen is more real than what the eyes behold. And it is in this trust, in this holy surrender, that the gates of grace swing wide. So I ask you, not with demand, but with invitation, can you live today as if your highest self has already arrived? Can you move with the energy of your future, not to chase it, but to embody it? When you walk with peace before the world gives you a reason to, you become the reason. When you radiate love without condition, you become the wellspring. When you act as if it's already yours, you become magnetic, not because you force outcomes, but because you no longer need them to complete you. This is not delusion. This is spiritual alignment. The Tao Te Ching tells us that the master lets things come and go, and our heart is as open as the sky. When you act from your essence and not your emptiness, you become that open sky, vast, receptive, untroubled by passing clouds. You realize that abundance is not a number, it is a way of being. That love is not something you earn, it is something you reveal. That success is not measured by the applause, but by the alignment between your soul and your steps. To act as if it's already yours is to reject the myth of waiting, waiting to be ready, waiting to be chosen, waiting for the stars to align. You are the one the stars are waiting on. You are the permission slip. You are the evidence of a universe that creates through consciousness. What if the only thing missing is your belief in yourself? You see, life responds not to what you hope for, but to what you embody. And when your inner frequency resonates with the life you desire, manifestation is not magic, it is natural. You no longer beg for what's yours, you bless it in advance. You no longer chase what is already destined, you welcome it home. And in this sacred posture of receiving without resistance, without clinging, you find that the greatest miracles are not in what you attract, but in who you become. The version of you who acts as if it's already yours is the version who remembers, I am not here to prove, I am here to express, I am not here to strive, I am here to align, I am not here to acquire worth, I am here to awaken it. So breathe, beloved soul. Breathe into the knowing that you are enough, that your life is not a problem to solve, but a mystery to honor, that your desires are not tests but invitations, that your presence is not an accident but a divine appointment. Live not as someone hoping to be worthy, live as someone who has always been holy. Let your posture speak of trust. Let your energy whisper of fulfillment. Let your every step declare without a word, it is already mine, it is already done. For the universe does not respond to desperation, it responds to conviction. And when your conviction is rooted not in arrogance but in remembrance, the very fabric of reality shifts. Mountains move, doors open, time bends. Not because you forced it, but because you became the version of yourself who no longer needed to. And that is power. That is presence. That is truth. That is who you already are, and it is already yours. There is a quiet revolution that begins not with action, but with intention. When you rise in the morning and choose to meet the day not from a place of grasping, but from a place of gratitude, as if what you long for has already been given, something sacred begins to stir. You are no longer waiting for signs from the outside world. You become the sign. You are no longer pleading with life to deliver what your soul knows it deserves. You are living in the vibration of already receiving it, and that frequency cannot be ignored by the universe. Because it is the language the universe speaks, faith without demand, belief without resistance, love without condition. This is the true miracle of creation. You do not create by force, you create by resonance. A tuning fork held to stillness will begin to vibrate when another tuning fork of the same note is struck nearby. So it is with your reality. You do not need to chase love or abundance or purpose. You need only to become their matching vibration. You must live in harmony with what you are calling forth, not someday, not after proof, but now, in this breath, in this very moment. Because this moment is not preparation for life, it is life. How different would your life be if you trusted, truly trusted, that you are already held in divine hands? Not as an abstract idea, but as an experiential truth. How would you speak, walk, and breathe if you knew the outcome was assured? If you knew, with the quiet confidence of the earth welcoming spring, that what you've asked for has already been granted. You would not rush, you would not strive, you would not doubt your path even when it meanders through shadows. You would rest in a deeper knowing that the sun does not doubt its rise, nor the tide its return, and you too are governed by a wisdom far greater than your fear. Act as if it's already yours, because in the realm of spirit it is. The formless precedes the formed. The inner becomes the outer. The invisible becomes visible when your belief clears the fog of doubt. The ancients understood this. Jesus said, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. Not believe it might come, or believe if you are worthy enough, but believe it is already so. That is not arrogance. That is alignment. That is surrender to a power that does not punish you with conditions, but invites you into remembrance. Your life is not a transaction. It is a reflection. Every thought you repeat becomes a seed. Every belief you hold becomes a lens. And the more you affirm that you are not there yet, the more you prolong your own becoming. The soul does not grow by accumulation, but by revelation. You do not need to become someone else. You need to remove what never belonged. The truth of who you are is not waiting at the end of a spiritual checklist. It is revealed in the presence you bring to now. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a cliff, with all you've ever desired shimmering on the other side, not far, not unreachable, but veiled. And the only bridge to that realm is belief. Not a belief in what might be, but in what already is. And with each step forward, not waiting for the bridge to appear first, but walking as if it were already beneath your feet, you begin to see that the bridge was never missing. It was simply invisible to eyes clouded by fear. Acting as if is not pretending. It is becoming. It is shifting your identity from one who hopes to one who knows, from one who wishes to one who welcomes. This is not about manipulation of the material world. It is about remembrance of the spiritual truth. You are a being of consciousness. You are not separate from Source. You are an expression of it. And Source knows no lack. It does not grasp. It does not beg. It simply is. And in its being, it creates worlds. To walk in this knowing is to be free. To look upon the chaos of the world and say, still I trust. To hold your arms open to the unknown and whisper, still I receive. To stand in the space between what you see and what you know, and offer gratitude for the invisible miracles already blooming beneath the soil. For even a seed must sit in darkness before it feels the sun. Even the moon goes unseen, yet still she pulls the tides. The power of living as if it's already yours is not in the outcome, but in who you become through the process. You become steady. You become soft. You become untouchable by the winds of doubt because you are anchored not in appearance, but in essence. And essence does not change with circumstance. It is eternal. It is the divine pulse within you that beats without your effort, loves without your permission, and knows without needing proof. So practice now not in grand gestures, but in the quiet rituals of belief. Smile before the world gives you a reason. Speak kindly to yourself before the evidence arrives. Dress not for the job you have, but for the life you are ready to receive. Love yourself not because you've earned it, but because you've remembered it was never lost. With each small act, you reinforce the truth. I am not preparing for a miracle. I am walking in the miracle. I am not waiting for the light. I am the light choosing to shine even in shadow. The energy you hold is your offering to the universe. And when that offering is rooted in wholeness, in trust, in already enoughness, life reflects it back like a still lake reflecting the sky. There is nothing you must chase. There is only truth to embody. And when you do, when you rise in the energy of fulfillment, of love, of peace, you will notice that life no longer feels like an uphill climb. It becomes a flow, a gentle unfolding, a sacred dance between you and the infinite. And the dance is already in motion. The music has already begun. All that remains is your yes, your participation, your willingness to move not with desperation, but with devotion, not with urgency, but with grace. Not with fear, but with faith that what is truly yours cannot miss you, and what is not will fall away with gentleness when you no longer cling. So breathe and walk as one who remembers. Breathe and speak as one who already knows. Breathe and love as if you've never been hurt, because the soul cannot be broken, it can only be covered. And with every step, every breath, every word spoken in truth, you uncover what was always there. The abundance of now, the radiance of your being, the miracle of already having everything you need within. And you do. It is already yours. ChatGPT Danoi. When you live as if it's already yours, your energy ceases to whisper lack and begins to declare presence. You no longer emit the silent cry of please, but the calm affirmation of thank you. And in that shift, reality responds not because it's being manipulated, but because it's finally being met. Met with a consciousness that no longer questions its worthiness. Met with a spirit that no longer seeks permission to be whole. You become a participant in your unfolding rather than a spectator waiting for applause. Life bends not in obedience to your demands, but in recognition of your alignment. You are not here to wait. You are here to allow. And allowing is a sacred art, the art of trusting what cannot yet be seen. The art of surrendering not in weakness, but in wisdom. To act as if is to bow to the invisible order of things. It is to know that your inner landscape is the soil from which form takes shape. You are not chasing life, you are sculpting it with your vibration. And when your vibration says, it is done, the pieces begin to assemble in ways you could not predict because they are no longer confined by the limits of logic. They are moved by grace. Let us not forget, grace is not earned. It is revealed when you step aside. It flows not to the one who tries the hardest, but to the one who trusts the deepest. When you walk in grace, you stop trying to prove yourself to a world that cannot give you what it did not create. You begin to see that acting as if is not performance, it is alignment with your original truth. And your original truth is abundance. Your original truth is peace. Your original truth is love without condition, value without negotiation, divinity without delay. This is the energy of already seen, already heard, already enough, not in the future, not when things improve, not when they choose you, now. Because your soul exists outside of time. And when you live from the soul, time becomes your servant, not your master. Delay becomes an illusion. Waiting becomes unnecessary. You live the answered prayer by becoming its embodiment. And from that space, you don't have to ask, when will it come? Because it is already here, vibrating through your cells, reflected in your smile, flowing in your breath. And yes, there will be moments when doubt returns, when the world tugs at your confidence with its noise, its metrics, its mirrors. Let it come, but do not let it lead. Doubt is not your compass. It is merely a shadow cast by the light of your awakening, a passing cloud across the sun of your certainty. Do not curse the clouds, bless them, for they remind you of the brilliance that lies behind. Every time you return to the truth of already, you dissolve another thread of the illusion that said you must wait to be worthy. Act as if it's already yours, and watch how your world softens around you, not because life has changed, but because you have. And the world is nothing more than a canvas painted with the brush of your perception. When you see with the eyes of enoughness, you begin to find beauty in the ordinary. You stop grasping at what you don't have and start tending to what you do. And in that tending and that reverent stewardship of the now, the seeds of tomorrow take root. The journey is not about racing toward what you think will complete you. It is about standing still long enough to realize you already are. And from that realization, action becomes expression, not escape. Movement becomes art, not obligation. Your life becomes a prayer not spoken in desperation, but lived in devotion. You become the answer, not because you found it, but because you stopped looking anywhere else. There is no power greater than a soul who knows it already holds what it once sought. There is no force more magnetic than a heart that beats in harmony with its desires, not because it needs them, but because it honors them as sacred echoes of its own divinity. To act as if it's already yours is to finally come home. Home to yourself, home to the breath, home to the truth that nothing real can be taken and nothing meant for you can pass you by. So walk slowly, speak gently, love fiercely, and trust the unseen with the same confidence you give to the sunrise. Not because you're naive, but because you're awake. Because you've remembered that your being is not a question waiting to be answered, it is an answer waiting to be lived. And as you live it, something shifts, not just in your life, but in the collective field around you. Your certainty becomes permission for others to remember their own. You are not just creating your future, you are remembering it. You are not just acting, it is the truth emerging through your posture, your voice, your presence. And that presence changes everything. Not through force, but through resonance. Not through trying harder, but through knowing deeper. What was once elusive becomes inevitable, not because the world has finally given it to you, but because you finally gave it to yourself. And that, dear soul, is the miracle. You are the miracle, and it is already yours. There is an intelligence far beyond thought that orchestrates all things in perfect rhythm, a silent symphony conducting the stars, turning seeds into trees and tides into waves. That same wisdom lives in you, not beside you, not above you, but as you. It does not require effort to function, it simply flows. And the more you attune to its current, the more your life becomes an effortless unfolding rather than a struggle against unseen winds. This is not about withdrawing from the world, it is about entering it with a different awareness, no longer seeing yourself as separate from the source of all things, but as an extension of it. When you act as if it's already yours, you stop bargaining with life. There is something sacred in claiming your desires not as needs born from emptiness, but as expressions of the divine seeking to experience itself through you. When you allow those desires to take up space in your heart without apology, without shrinking, you become a conduit for the sacred to move. You begin to see that wanting is not weakness, it is a signal from the soul. And when you embrace it without shame, it ceases to be a longing and becomes a prayer, one that is already answered in the invisible realm of being. To walk in this awareness is to live in quiet majesty. You no longer seek approval in shallow waters. You draw your power from the deep. You do not need to announce yourself to be validated. You walk with a presence that speaks louder than words, a frequency that cannot be faked. It is the energy of remembrance, and it changes rooms, not because it demands attention, but because it carries truth. You are no longer a reflection of the noise around you. You are a beacon of the silence within. And in that silence, there is knowing, a knowing that does not need to be understood to be trusted, a knowing that bypasses logic, bypasses time, and plants its roots in eternity. When you live from that place, your timing becomes impeccable, not because you control it, but because you're aligned with the greater rhythm. You arrive at doors just as they open. You speak words that hearts were waiting to hear. You find yourself in the right place, not because you planned it, but because you allowed yourself to be led. This is the nature of true abundance. It comes not to those who chase, but to those who rest in the field of already. And resting is not the absence of action, it is the presence of trust. You can move and build and dream, but from a place of inner sufficiency, not outer desperation. And in that shift, everything you touch becomes infused with sacred intention. Your life becomes a vessel through which grace pours freely, unblocked by fear, unhindered by doubt. Let yourself soften into this truth. Let yourself be held by it. Let your very breath become an act of participation in this divine unfolding. For the soul does not want proof, it wants presence. It does not seek to understand everything, it seeks to embody what it already knows. You do not have to figure it all out. You do not have to see the whole path. You need only to be willing to walk the next step as if the ground is already laid beneath your feet. And it is. Every unseen provision, every divine appointment, every hidden gift, already there. Waiting not for your perfection, but for your permission. Waiting not for your control, but for your surrender. So open your hands, open your heart, walk forward as if your highest life is not a possibility. It is a memory waiting to be reawakened. And in that walk, in that holy posture of quiet knowing, everything begins to rise to meet you, because you have finally remembered who you are, and you are the one it was always meant for. There is a peace that arrives, not when the noise subsides, but when your allegiance shifts from the demands of the mind to the whispers of the spirit. It is the peace that comes when you stop measuring your progress by how much you've acquired and start feeling your way into alignment with what never left you. In this space, you no longer strain toward outcomes, you lean into your being. You become less concerned with how and when, and more attuned to the still voice that quietly affirms, this is who you've always been. That stillness is not the end of your journey, it is the beginning of everything real. As you embody what is already yours, your relationship with uncertainty begins to change. What once felt like threat becomes invitation. What once stirred anxiety now calls forth trust. You no longer see the unknown as something to fear, but as a sacred canvas upon which grace paints its most vivid miracles. The unknown is not empty. It is full brimming with everything that can only enter once your grip loosens. So you let go, you release your timelines, your agendas, your need for the map, and in doing so, you make space. Space for the divine to do what the mind could never orchestrate. And here, in this open field of allowing, a gentler strength emerges. You are no longer moved by external conditions. You begin to sense the deeper weather, the soul climate that does not change with the seasons. Even in the face of delay or challenge, something in you remains steady because you've rooted your identity not in outcomes, but in essence. You carry yourself differently, not with bravado, but with unshakable clarity, a clarity that does not speak loudly yet shifts everything it touches. You are no longer proving. You are no longer hiding. You are simply present, and presence is the most magnetic force in the universe. From this place of presence, inspiration flows not in spurts, but as a quiet river. Ideas arrive not because you chase them, but because you become a landing place for wisdom. The less you force, the more you receive. And what you receive carries a weightless power, not to impress others, but to awaken truth in them. Your energy becomes an invitation, not a performance. You no longer pursue impact through effort, you allow it through embodiment. And this shift changes everything, not just the way you live, but the way others feel in your presence. There is no ambition more sacred than the desire to live as your truest self, not to build something grand, but to dwell in what is real. Not to become extraordinary, but to remember the quiet extraordinariness of being. In this remembering, you reclaim what the world tried to condition out of you, the instinct to trust your inner knowing above external noise. And once that knowing is restored, you realize you were never really lost. You had only forgotten to listen, so you listen now. Not to the fear, not to the doubt, but to the quiet rhythm that beats beneath every breath, every moment of surrender, every glimpse of joy that arises without cause. You listen not for instruction, but for resonance. You follow what feels true, even when it makes no sense to the mind, especially then, because truth often lives in places the intellect cannot reach. It lives in the body, in the breath, and the beauty that brings tears for no reason. And as you live from that resonance, something ancient awakens, not a version of you that is new, but a part of you that is eternal. You do not need to explain it. You do not need to understand how it works. You only need to allow yourself to be moved by it, because that movement is not random, it is love in motion. And when love moves through you, it doesn't just rearrange your path, it transforms your pace. Your need to rush dissolves. Your fear of missing out fades. You realize you are not running out of time, you are returning to it, returning to the sacred now, where everything you need has already arrived. And in this return, gratitude arises unbidden. Not the kind you recite from habit, but the kind that wells up from a place too deep for words. Gratitude not for what you've received, but for what you've remembered. That you were never behind. That nothing was ever withheld. That the whole journey was guiding you back to this soft, expansive, luminous presence that asks for nothing but your openness. So let it in, let it move you, let it speak through you, let it shape your days with a grace that makes no sense and needs no defense. The mind may resist, the world may question, but your soul knows, and that knowing is more than enough. You don't have to convince anyone, you don't have to wait for permission, you don't even have to feel ready. You only have to breathe and believe, not because belief makes it true, but because belief makes it visible. And what is visible now was already yours. And now, as the breath deepens and the noise quiets, you come to the sacred edge, the threshold between who you thought you had to become and who you already are. There is nothing more to strive for, nothing more to prove. The seeking has softened into seeing. And in this gentle arrival, you remember that the life you once reached for with outstretched hands was never outside of you. It was always waiting in the stillness beneath your chest, in the timeless rhythm of your being. You are not becoming the dream. You are awakening to the truth that you are the dreamer, the architect, the breath and the form. And the moment you stop asking whether you deserve it is the moment it begins to move toward you, not because you pulled it in, but because you ceased pushing it away. There is a hush now, a holiness, a pause before the wave. This is the space where all things are born, not from effort, but from surrender. From the quiet remembrance that the infinite has always been dreaming you into form. Let yourself rest here, not as an end, but as a beginning. Let yourself breathe here, not as a practice, but as a prayer. Let yourself feel the grace that surrounds you, not as a reward, but as a mirror. A reflection of the soul that has never doubted your worth, never questioned your place, never stopped loving you, not even for a moment. That soul has waited patiently beneath every identity, every achievement, every mask, waiting for your return. And you have returned, not with fanfare, not with trumpets, but with the soft footsteps of one who has remembered. You walk lighter now, you speak slower, you listen deeper, because you no longer carry the weight of pretending to be incomplete. You no longer chase the mirage of someday. You no longer barter with life for a sense of belonging. You belong, you always have. So walk forward not to get there, but because you are already there. Speak your truth not to be heard, but because silence has become too full to contain it. Offer your love not to earn anything, but because it is your nature to give, and live not to escape time, but to sanctify it with your presence. You are not late. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are the pulse of eternity wrapped in form. You are the living answer to a divine question. You are the breath of the universe becoming aware of itself. So trust the pull you feel. Trust the softness that stirs. Trust the light that rises without asking. It knows the way. It always did. And when you doubt, when the old thoughts return to knock on the doors of your certainty, remember this: you have walked through fire and emerged whole. You have touched the edge of forgetting and still chosen to remember. You have stood in the storm and held on to the whisper that said, you are more than this. And you are the prayer and the fulfillment, the seeker and the sacred, the river and the ocean. And as this truth settles in your bones, as your breath merges with the wind, as your heartbeat begins to echo the pulse of stars, you will know, not in your mind, but in your being, that what you've longed for, what you've waited for, what you've hoped and searched and reached for has never been separate, has never been distant, has never been delayed. It is here, it is now, it is you, and it is already yours. There is a silent architect behind every moment of your life, a sculptor that carves your reality, not with hands, but with thoughts, with beliefs, with quiet assumptions you don't even realize you are making. These assumptions, inherited like the echo of voices you never questioned, paint the sky you see each day. And so much of our suffering, our limitation, our fear, does not come from what is, but from what we assume is true. You have believed that life is hard, that love is scarce, that success is earned through struggle, and that joy must be postponed for some far-off finish line. You have believed, perhaps without ever saying it aloud, that your worth must be proven, that your beauty must be validated, that your dreams must be justified by practicality. And yet, none of these are truths. They are assumptions, fragile assumptions wrapped in the illusion of permanence. But illusions, no matter how long they've lived in your mind, can be dissolved in a single breath of awareness. The great teacher Jesus once said, "It is done unto you as you believe," and in those words lies the quiet key to your freedom. For what you assume to be possible, what you believe to be real, what you quietly expect from the world becomes the architecture of your experience. Change your assumptions, and the world you see, indeed, the life you live, must follow. Assumptions are not innocent. They are powerful. They are prayers in disguise, spoken not with lips, but with energy. And the universe does not hear what you want, it hears what you are. It does not respond to what you beg, for it mirrors back what you assume to be yours. So if you walk through life assuming betrayal, you will meet it. If you walk assuming love, it will find you. Not because the world changes, but because you do. Let us look deeper then, beneath the surface of your patterns, beneath the reflexes of doubt, beneath the armor you've worn for so long it feels like skin. There in the silence between your thoughts lives a truth so simple, so profound, that it frightens the part of you still addicted to suffering. The truth is this: you are not bound by your past. You are not defined by what has been. You are only ever limited by what you continue to assume is true. And assumptions, like costumes, can be removed. What if you assume that you are already worthy? What if you assume that the universe is friendly, not hostile, that life wants to bless you, not test you? What if you believe that things are always working out for your highest good, even when your ego cannot comprehend how? What if you assumed every morning that love is your natural state in abundance, your divine inheritance? To the mind conditioned in fear, these assumptions sound naive, but to the soul, they are home. To the ego, they are a threat, but to the spirit, they are the beginning of awakening. Rumi, that beloved mystic, once said, "Don't get lost in your pain. Know that one day your pain will become your cure." But how can pain become healing? Only when the assumptions we have built around it begin to dissolve. Only when we stop assuming that we are victims, that life is against us, that hardship is our identity. Pain transforms when we stop assigning it meaning rooted in fear. Every assumption is a lens, and through that lens you interpret the world. If the lens is cracked with judgment, then love appears dangerous. If the lens is clouded with shame, then joy feels unearned. But you can change the lens. You can pause and question the thought that has governed your behavior for decades. You can ask, is this really true, or is it something I've assumed because someone once told me it was? Perhaps you've assumed you're too old, too late, too broken, too ordinary. And these beliefs have shaped your posture, your choices, your hesitations. But what if they were never true? What if time is irrelevant to the soul? What if healing is not only possible, it's natural? What if ordinariness is a myth and your very existence is a miracle? When you change your assumptions, you don't just think differently, you see differently. The world begins to shift its colors. Opportunities that once felt impossible begin to whisper your name. People reflect back the love you started to give yourself. The very fabric of your reality begins to bend in response to your inner transformation. But the ego resists. It says, be realistic, be careful, don't assume too much or you'll be disappointed. It clings to the old assumptions like a child clutches a familiar blanket, even when it's tattered and cold. But the soul, oh the soul, it is not here to be safe, it is here to be free. And freedom begins the moment you stop assuming the worst. You were not born to live out a story of inherited limits. You were not born to repeat the same thought patterns that kept your ancestors small. You were born to question, to awaken, to rewrite the script. And the first line of that new script begins with a new assumption. I am not what I was told I had to be. Assume that you are the beloved of the universe. Assume that miracles are your birthright. Assume that joy is not a luxury, it is your compass. And when the mind says, but what if it doesn't work out? Smile gently and respond, but what if it does? The moment you shift your inner stance, the moment you assume your worth, your wholeness, your connection to Source, the universe rearranges itself accordingly, not out of obligation, but in resonance. You are a magnet, not for what you want, but for what you believe is possible. Change the belief, and the magnet changes. There is a Taoist teaching that says, when I let go of who I am, I become what I might be. And what is assumption if not a false identity? A mask that says, this is who I am, this is what I deserve, this is what I can expect. But the soul has no such boundaries. The soul laughs at assumptions. It knows only expansion. It knows only truth. and truth is always bigger than belief. So let your assumptions become lighter. Let them float like leaves in the wind. Let them be questioned, softened, rewritten with love. Assume that your path is sacred. Assume that your desires are divine. Assume that every setback is a setup for deeper grace. Assume that there is no such thing as wasted time, only preparation for the next chapter. And when the old assumptions come knocking, when fear says you're not enough, when doubt whispers it's too late, greet them with compassion, but do not invite them in. You are not obligated to believe every thought that visits you. You are free to choose a new story. Let that story be rooted in wonder. Let it bloom with the fragrance of new possibilities. Let it rise like dawn after a long night of forgetting. Change your assumptions, beloved soul, and you will find that life was never the problem. Your lens was. The moment you change that lens, life becomes not something to endure, but something to embrace. And from that embrace, everything is born anew. The right words arrive, the right doors open, not because you control them, but because you are finally aligned with their arrival. This alignment is not born of force. It does not come from efforting, from manipulating, from bending the world to your will. It comes from surrendering the assumptions that kept you disconnected. It comes from laying down the belief that you must always strive, always prove, always outperform the ghosts of your past. The universe does not speak in pressure, it speaks in peace. And the moment you assume peace as your baseline, life rushes in to mirror it. You have been taught that assumptions must be proven, that faith must be earned. But the soul knows better. The soul knows that what you assume with deep conviction becomes the soil from which reality grows. It is not arrogance to expect goodness, it is wisdom. It is not delusion to trust the path, it is intimacy with the unseen. You are not here to hope from a distance, you are here to participate in the unfolding by choosing your inner weather. Assume light, and your eyes will find it. Assume love, and your heart will magnetize it. Assume expansion, and the walls will begin to dissolve. Life does not give you what you want, it gives you who you are in consciousness. And so the shift is not external, it is inward, quiet, seismic. You rearrange your being, and your outer life cannot help but realign in response. There is no need to wait. The moment is always now. Not someday, not after the wound is healed or the fear is quieted. Now is the only canvas life ever paints upon, and the paintbrush is your perspective. With every assumption you hold, you are adding color to your experience, muted tones of doubt or vibrant hues of trust. The choice is yours. It always has been. Consider this. Perhaps the mountain was never an obstacle, but an invitation to rise. Perhaps the silence you feared was not emptiness, but fullness too sacred for noise. Perhaps the things you assumed were curses were blessings in disguise, wrapped in unfamiliar packaging. Life speaks in paradox. Its gifts often come disguised as endings, its initiations cloaked in discomfort. But when you assume purpose in all things, you begin to receive the wisdom even in the ache. To live this way is to become an alchemist of the soul. You do not deny what happens, you transmute it. You take the raw material of experience and shape it with awareness, and the tool of that shaping is your assumption. Assume that everything is conspiring for your awakening, and even your pain will bow before that truth, not because you wished it so, but because you aligned with a higher order of perception. There is nothing passive about this way of being. It requires presence. It demands intimacy with yourself. It calls you to become aware of the silent scripts running your life and to revise them not with judgment, but with reverence. You are the author. You are the voice behind the voice. And in this realization lies your liberation. So let the old assumptions crumble, not with shame, but with gratitude. They serve their purpose. They brought you here. But they are not required for where you're going. You are stepping into a new relationship with reality, not one of resistance, but of receptivity. Not one of proving, but of allowing. Not one of fear, but of faith so deep it no longer needs to explain itself. This is the sacred rebellion, to assume love in a world that forgets it, to assume peace when chaos clatters at your door, to assume that your being here is no accident, that you are a thread in the great tapestry woven by hands wiser than your own. And so you rise not by force, but by recognition. You do not need to see the whole staircase. You only need to assume that each step will meet you as you move. You do not need the world's agreement, you only need your soul's permission. And the soul has already whispered yes. Now, walk. And as you walk, walk not in haste, but in holy rhythm, each step a declaration that you trust the unseen more than the appearances, that you lean into the invisible arms of grace more than the shifting winds of circumstance. Walk like the ground itself loves your feet, because it does. Walk like the wind carries your prayers ahead of you, because it does. Walk not as one trying to arrive, but as one who never left the sacred path. The world may call you foolish. It may scoff at your quiet confidence, your refusal to panic, your deep and unreasonable joy in the midst of uncertainty. But this is the joy of the awakened. This is the freedom of the soul that no longer waits for evidence to believe in beauty, but sees beauty because it expects to. Not out of naivety, but out of clarity. Not out of fantasy, but out of alignment with the great eternal intelligence that weaves galaxies into being and still has the kindness to rise each morning in your chest as breath. This is the power of assumption sanctified. It is not the clenching hope of the ego. It is the relaxed knowing of the spirit. It is the quiet, unwavering posture of one who has remembered that they are already held. When you assume that nothing is against you, you stop looking for enemies and begin to recognize teachers. When you assume that you are guided, you stop grasping for signs and begin to feel led. When you assume you are loved, you stop seeking permission to be, and you begin simply to be full, radiant, whole. Assumptions are not thoughts, they are states of being. And each one you carry becomes a seed dropped into the fertile soil of creation. What grows is not random. What blooms is what you have affirmed in silence over and over again. And so listen closely to your silence. What assumptions live in the background of your awareness, humming like distant music you've forgotten you're hearing? Do you assume that you are safe in this life, that no matter the waves, there is a deeper current always carrying you home? Do you assume that your worth is not measured in output, but in presence? Do you assume that the same power that paints sunsets and cradles stars calls you beloved? Because if you do, you begin to live differently. You speak slower. You look people in the eyes. You rest more. You forgive quicker. You stop guarding your heart like a wounded warrior and start offering it like a sacred gift. And suddenly, without changing your outer world, everything changes. You are no longer caught in the echo of what went wrong. You are no longer rehearsing the worst. You are no longer preparing for heartbreak, but preparing for beauty. And the universe listens. It always listens, not to your lips, but to your frequency, to your assumptions, to the quiet yes or no that lives beneath every word you speak. This is why miracles appear not where they are deserved, but where they are expected, because expectation is creation. And creation does not come from pressure, it comes from permission. Permission to trust, permission to allow, permission to stop arguing with what is and start collaborating with what wants to become. When you change your assumptions, the mind may panic. It will say, but I've been hurt before, and the soul will answer, yes, and still I remained. The ego will shout, you can't just believe things into being, and the spirit will whisper, that's the only way anything ever comes to life. Every teacher of truth, every mystic who touched the eternal knew this. Life is not what happens, it is what is allowed through consciousness. Assumption is the open door. It is the agreement we make with the divine. It is the way we say without words, I am ready to live in harmony with what already knows how to heal me. And so, begin again. Not tomorrow, now. Assume you are supported and you will begin to notice the invisible hands that have always held you. Assume you are free and you will begin to see the doors you thought were walls. Assume you are loved and you will stop searching for evidence and begin living from the truth. Let this be the moment you lay down the armor of inherited beliefs. Let this be the breath where you stop defending your suffering. Let this be the exhale where you finally say, I no longer assume the worst, I assume the sacred. And watch, as quietly and certainly as dawn, the world around you begins to rearrange itself to mirror what you now know, that heaven was never a place, it was a state of consciousness. And you are home. There is a stillness you touch when you no longer assume you must earn every breath, when you no longer rise each day under the burden of proving your existence. In that stillness you meet the truth of who you've always been, unburdened, unconditioned, unbound. You begin to live not as a seeker, but as one who remembers. And in that remembrance, your steps soften, your gaze deepens. Your life becomes less about the chase and more about the grace of simply being. You see, every assumption that you carry is like a script handed down through generations, some loving, many fearful, and without questioning, you recite them. I must struggle to be worthy. I must be chosen to feel valuable. I must succeed to feel safe. But these scripts were not written by the truth of your being. They were written by those who forgot theirs. And now, in this moment of gentle clarity, you are invited to lay them down, not with rebellion, but with reverence. They served their time. They taught you contrast. But you are not bound to continue the story of fear. Assume now, beloved, that your presence is enough, not because you've done everything right, but because your being itself is an echo of divinity. Assume that joy is not a rare reward for perfect performance, but a natural rhythm your soul wants to remember. Assume that the more you align with truth, the less effort is required. Because truth has its own momentum, it does not need your struggle, only your surrender. This surrender is not a giving up, it is a giving over. A giving over of the reins, the control, the tired habit of believing you must carry the world on your back. You were never meant to bear it alone. The same force that turns seeds into forests and embryos into humans is orchestrating your becoming, but only when you assume that such intelligence loves you, not judges you, that it supports you, not tests you, that it moves through you, not around you. When you live from that assumption, every moment becomes a prayer, every gesture becomes sacred. Washing your hands becomes a baptism. Sitting in stillness becomes communion. Speaking from the heart becomes prophecy, because life is no longer something to fix it, it's something to witness, to flow with, to trust deeply even when it doesn't look like you thought it would. The assumptions of fear are built on the past. They are stitched together by what didn't work, by who walked away, by what broke. But assumptions of the soul are drawn from the eternal. They are not based on what happened, they are based on what is always true. That you are loved, that you are guided, that you are held by something that cannot fail you, even when it looks like you failed yourself. And here's the miracle. When you shift your assumptions, the past loses its grip. You stop dragging it like a shadow into every new dawn. You stop expecting old wounds to reopen. You stop assuming that life will repeat its darkest chapters. Because something in you begins to whisper louder than memory, that was then, and this is now. Now, where a new assumption has taken root. Now, where you don't anticipate loss but expect learning. Now, where you no longer prepare for betrayal but open yourself to trust. And when the old thoughts come, because they will when they arrive, like uninvited ghosts asking you to assume their shape once more, you breathe, you bless them. And you say, not today. Today I choose a deeper truth. Today I remember who I am. You don't need to fight the old stories. Just stop feeding them. They fade when ignored, they dissolve when starved of belief, and in their place, new stories rise. Not from effort, but from alignment. Stories of worth, of joy, of connection, so real it needs no explanation. Change your assumptions, and you no longer wait for life to prove itself to you. You begin to live as if it already has. You wake each morning as if goodness is guaranteed not by certainty, but by choice. And life, in its mysterious wisdom, begins to rise to meet your expectation. This is the dance between the seen and the unseen, between belief and becoming, between the assumption and its unfolding. And the more you trust the rhythm, the more you find yourself carried not by force, but by faith. So keep walking soul first. Let the world catch up. Let the old assumptions fall away like autumn leaves. Let your yes to life be louder than your fear of being wrong. And when doubt returns, as it does, remember this. The assumption that transforms your life is never the one that proves true. It is the one that brings you peace. Choose peace, and the rest will follow. ChatGPT da noi, there is a profound shift that takes place when you no longer place the weight of your joy in the hands of circumstance. When you awaken one morning and realize that how you feel is not a verdict passed down by the world, but a vibration born within you, cultivated not by control, but by the tender audacity to choose a new lens. The lens of divine neutrality, the lens of inner authorship, the lens that no longer asks, what will happen to me, but gently declares, I know who I am, and that is enough. And so, with this new lens, you begin to see the world as it is not as your wounds interpreted it, but as your soul remembers it. Trees are no longer obstacles to be passed, but teachers of stillness. Rain is no longer an inconvenience, but an anointing from the sky. Even your so-called setbacks start to glisten with hidden meaning, like constellations waiting to be named. The sacred was never absent, it was only unrecognized through the eyes of old assumptions. The human tendency is to brace, to contract in anticipation of pain, to prepare for the worst as if it were inevitable. But the soul does not brace. It opens. It welcomes. It expands not because it is naive, but because it knows that nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal can truly harm what is eternal within you. The soul walks forward not with calculation, but with communion, with the breeze, with the breath, with the invisible guidance that turns silence into scripture and coincidence into calling. You begin to notice something subtle yet unmistakable. The more you soften, the more the world responds. The more you release the assumption of danger, the more safety reveals itself in unexpected places. A stranger's smile, a timely song, a moment of stillness that meets you like an old friend. It was always there, but now you are available, because now you assume that life is not against you, it is inside you, reaching out to remind you that you are never alone. There is nothing passive about this softness. This is not resignation, it is radical receptivity. The kind of receptivity that says, I no longer need to grip the steering wheel of fate. I no longer need to preemptively defend my heart. I trust the rhythm even when I cannot hear the melody. I trust the unfolding even when I cannot see the map. This trust is not earned, it is chosen, and in choosing it, you step into a higher order of living. One where peace becomes your baseline, not your reward. And what happens next cannot be scripted. For once you live from the assumption that you are carried, you begin to dance with life rather than wrestle it. You speak not to be heard, but to honor the silence behind your words. You act not to be seen, but to align with what feels deeply true. And in that alignment, the anxiety dissolves, the pressure melts. The incessant need to prove yourself evaporates like morning mist in the light of a new awareness. From this place, your desires take on a different tone. They are no longer cries of lack, but expressions of joy. No longer demands for completion, but invitations to expansion. You no longer chase the dream to escape yourself. You live the dream to express yourself. When you live like this, you become luminous. Not because your life is perfect, but because your being is undivided. People feel it. Rooms change when you enter. Not because of what you say, but because of what you no longer carry. The burden of doubt, the armor of fear, the posture of defensiveness. They fall away like old skins that serve their time but are no longer needed. You begin to walk as one who knows the sacred secret, that life is not here to test you, it is here to reveal you. That love is not something to earn, it is the atmosphere you breathe. That wholeness is not a distant mountaintop, it is the unshakable ground beneath your feet right now in this breath. And when the storms come, and they will, you do not curse them, you bless them. For you know that even the winds of sorrow carry seeds of revelation. You no longer assume that pain is punishment. You understand that it too is a portal. And in your willingness to feel it fully, you extract the gold that was hidden in its shadow. This is the alchemy of awakened assumption. And from it, a new world is born. Not outside you, but within you. A world where your peace is not postponed, where your joy is not conditional, where your worth is not negotiated. A world where you live not from fear of what could go wrong, but from love for what already is. And that love is you. And so you come to this final breath in the journey, not as an end, but as a soft return to the beginning. Not as a conclusion, but as a homecoming to the space within you that is always known, always whispered, always waited in stillness. You are not arriving anywhere new. You are simply shedding what you were never meant to carry. The assumptions have fallen like autumn leaves, gently, silently, without fanfare. And beneath them you find yourself not a version polished for the world, not a mask crafted for survival, but the quiet, luminous truth of your being. It is unbothered by circumstance, unmeasured by time, untouched by the noise of 1,000 identities. It simply is. And in its presence, everything you thought you needed to become dissolves into irrelevance. You no longer need to brace against life. You no longer need to predict its winds. You no longer need to prepare for loss before joy has even arrived. You have remembered something holy, that your inner world sets the tone for everything that follows. That your assumption is not a hope, it is a prayer, not a defense, but an offering. And that the universe does not respond to your fear, it responds to your frequency. You begin to trust with your whole being, not because the evidence is perfect, but because the trust itself is the evidence. And in that sacred trust, life begins to meet you, not as a test, but as a mirror that reflects your new assumption, that you are already whole, already guided, already enough. You walk softer now, not because you are fragile, but because you are grounded. You speak with gentleness, not out of fear, but out of reverence for the silence behind your words. You listen not to respond, but to witness. You love not as a transaction, but as your native language. And the world around you begins to shimmer, not because the external has changed, but because your vision is cleared. You see the divine where you once saw danger. You feel the presence where you once felt absence. You notice that even in moments of uncertainty, something remains unshaken within you. That something is the soul anchored not in assumption, but in awareness. And awareness needs no defense, no proof, no future outcome to justify its existence. It is the truth behind every truth. There is no need to strive anymore. You no longer chase what you already are. You no longer seek validation in places that never knew how to see you. You no longer pretend that peace is a destination. You embody it breath by breath. And if the winds shift, you let them. If the world changes shape, you welcome it. If love transforms form, you bless its new direction. Because your assumption is no longer rooted in fear of loss, but in certainty of connection. And that connection is unbreakable. It is the invisible thread woven through your breath, your gaze, your being. It is the divine memory that can never be erased, only remembered, only reawakened. So you walk now not as someone trying to find the way, but as the way itself. You speak now not as someone reaching for wisdom, but as wisdom made flesh. You live now not as someone who hopes for miracles, but as someone who recognizes that the miracle is the very act of being alive, aware, and aligned. No more rehearsing disaster, no more rehearsing pain, no more preparing for a storm while the sun warms your face. You assume peace. You assume love. You assume that everything unfolding before you is sacred, even when it is silent. And in that holy assumption, you rest not in passivity, but in profound power. The kind of power that needs no stage, no applause, no armor, just presence, just breath, just this. And now, beloved, you are free.